Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is NUR IZZLYN binti MOHAMMAD ZAMLI. My matric numbers is 18051246. I'll be presenting the provision in Groups 4 Statute named LGBTQ Control and Protection Act 2021, where the provisions where these provisions will be discussed in view of Western jurisprudence and Islamic jurisprudence. Okay, so basically some of the Western jurisprudence school, particularly like naturalist and Islamic jurisprudence source, Al-Quran and Sunnah never support the immoral activities done by these LGBTQ people. Diaz, a naturalist, has said that law is a basic moral of quality in law which prevents the total separation of the East from the Orc, which simply means that no law should legalize all the immoral activities of LGBTQ. And in Al-Quran, it's in factly prohibited the same-sex activities which practice among the LGBTQ person in Surah Hud verse 78, and Rasulullah SAW also has said in a hadith narrated by Abu Musa, where the Prophet SAW said that إِذَا أَتَى الرَّجُلُ الرَّجُلَ فَهُمَا زَانِيًا, which means when a man approaches a man, they are both adulterers. Pursuant to this doctrine, for application, basically this LGBTQ Act provides for certain offences committed by LGBTQ people and their punishment in addition to other offences in other written laws, as well as to provide for the equal rights of the LGBTQ people on certain rights and fundamental rights provided in federal constitution. With regard to the offences and punishment for LGBTQ people, Chapter 3 of this LGBTQ Act has criminalised the immoral activities of these LGBTQ people. The Islamic jurisprudence source, Al-Quran, describes the hudud as exemplary punishment from God. This is provided in Surah Al-Ma'idah verse 38, where this means penalties imposed upon the person are needed as exemplary or deterrent in nature, meanwhile, according to Western jurisprudence, particularly legal positivists, John Austin, he is in the view that law is the command of the sovereign backed by the sanctions. Therefore, in order to make this chapter 3 to be a good law that can prevent the Malaysians from committing the crimes provided under this act, we are in view to back this prohibition with punishment or sanction. For example, we can see here, Section 7 of this Act has generally prohibited unnatural sex services from being done. And Section 8 of this Act prohibit providing illegal medical services for gender transition. Same goes with Section 9, where it prohibits the providing of financial assistance and services or facilities to LGBTQ activities in terms of collecting fund and also providing the facilities to set up an illegal association. And also for Section 10, it prohibits the preaching of LGBTQ doctrine. Also, Section 11, it prohibits cross-dressing, and Section 12, it prohibits the recognition of the same-sex marriage. All these sections from 7 until 12, it comes together with punishments that in expectation that we can provide this act as an efficient act to prohibit these immoral activities of LGBTQ people. So moving on to the chapter 2 of the legal protection, this chapter 2 will be regarding the legal protection which provided for LGBTQ people. As we all aware, in Malaysia there were many circumstances where the LGBTQ people were oppressed in terms of work, opportunity, education, and etc. So generally, as what mentioned before, some of the Western jurisprudence and Islamic jurisprudence source, which is Al-Quran and Sunnah, prohibit the immoral activities like same-sex activities done by LGBTQ people. However, in one side, these two jurisprudence still believe that as a human, the LGBTQ people still have their own human rights that render us to suggest a law that specifically protects these LGBTQ's rights. I will explain regarding this matter in light of Section 5 of this Act. Where basically Section 5 of this Act provides the law that discriminates the LGBTQ people. where the clause 1 of this section 5 states that any law, rule or policy that discriminate the LGBTQ people in matters stated below shall be void to the extent of its discrimination. The first matter is work fee or work opportunity. Second is education. Third, the use of public place. And fourth, the child adoption subject to registration of Adoption Act. We are suggested to draft this section because first, basically the matters stated above is the matters that the most of Malaysians give double standard treatment towards the LGBTQ person, and second, according to Western jurisprudence, particularly sociological school, law is an instrument to provide solidarity among the society. So we can see this in what sociology scholar Du Guid said regarding what is a good law. He said that law is a set of some formal norms aiming at creating solidarity in society. So according to Islamic jurisprudence, in Surah Al-Hujurat verse 13, Allah said that, O man, verily we created you from a male and female, and then we made you into nation and tribes, that you may know one another. The noblest of you in the sight of God is the most pious. We are in view that individual of the society cannot, if the individual of the society cannot respect the other individual's basic right, in the matters mentioned before, it will cause oppression and chaos among society and accordingly diminish the solidarity elements in Malaysia. So that's why we think it is a need to have this section to abstain individual from regulating any law that discriminates these LGBTQ people. But at the same time, this law requires LGBTQ people to respect the others' right as well. This is why we also draft a proviso under section 5, particularly clause 1C, which it read that provided that if the public place originally separated according to gender, the LGBTQ people must follow such law, rule or policy according to their original gender at birth. This is in order to preserve the right of the other individuals in using public place that involve gender separation like public toilet, especially for Muslim girls to preserve their aura. Plus, in order to render this act to become a good law, we follow what Austin, a legal positivist, said regarding a good law, that it must consist of inter alia sanction or punishment for breaching the law. That's why clause 2 of this section 5 punish the person or body that making law discriminating the LGBTQ people. Clause 2 read as followed. For the purpose of section 5 clause 1, any person or body propose or makes law, rule or policy that discriminates LGBTQ people in the above matters shall be punished with fine not exceeding 10,000 ringgit. Moving on to the chapter 4 of this LGBTQ Act, this chapter is regarding the prosecution and procedure in arrest until conviction. But for the purpose of this presentation, I will only focus on the procedure to arrest. The purpose of we regulating this procedure to arrest is because there are a lot of reported cases by Suhakam currently that there are authorized officers that made an arrest without legal manner that it degraded the right of the LGBTQ person. So based on Western jurisprudence, the principle, based on the Islamic jurisprudence, the principle of istishab, presumption of continuity in Islamic jurisprudence, one is not guilty until proven otherwise. So we are in view that it is a must that authorized officers must all time maintain the good name of agency when making an arrest to the alleged person, because the person could be an innocent man and it will be unfair for him to be treated in violence when he is yet to be proven guilty. So as a conclusion, Western and Islamic jurisprudence generally prohibit the immoral activities done by LGBTQ people, but at the same time, this jurisprudence, both jurisprudence requires human rights, including the LGBTQ Act 2021, including the LGBTQ people's right to be uprooted. So accordingly, this LGBTQ Act 2021 are suggested by us to consist of legal protection, offences and punishment, prosecution and procedures in arresting as well as prosecuting the LGBTQ people. With the existence of this LGBTQ Act, it provides equal right of LGBTQ people on certain rights, and at the same time, it teaches the LGBTQ people to respect the others' rights as well. Thank you for me. Thank you.